Thank you very much, Mr. Klemnis. I think that what a best opening that this. I think that we have to thank especially Dr. Klemnis because wanted strongly this collaboration, and I hope that yes, we can foster on. And it's a pleasure to work together for the sake of, for example, of the intertwined crisis. I will not get longer on this, but we will face this problem properly in this conference. That's the mission of this conference. And briefly, just to open the works, I will just say a few words about the One Health conference. So this is like the keynote speaker that will accompany us during the sessions of the 3 days. As you can see, it's like a very composed and very, you can say, multidisciplinary set of speakers. We have honored to have them, all of them, for their contribution. And this is also the group of our chairs. We have to thank all of them because thanks to them it's been possible to realize this conference. As George has said, Mediterranean has been a cradle of civilization, and nowadays is like the area where multiple crises are intertwining and are acting together. And together with like a multidisciplinary approach, we have to face them. This year, every year, for the ones that know also One Health from the previous edition, and also like for the ones that are knowing for the first time, we are trying to set our talk over a framework. As we recognize that the risk and the vulnerabilities are one part of like the solution that comes to the resolution of a crisis, this year we decide to use the Sendai framework. Sendai framework is a well-known UN framework to address natural risk and disaster. And it's based on two leverages: substantially reduce, so the vulnerability and risks, and substantially increase the resilience and responsiveness, as George was saying. On these two leverage, we properly shape our program. If you check the program, these are the areas in which we want to organize our talks this year. And the first part will be properly to increase resilience and responsiveness on the term of ecosystem and on the term of the community, because this is the goal of the One Health, not to address communities and environment altogether into an holistic approach. Of course, we will address the health effect of disasters and the health effect of disaster and crisis, and of course, substantially reduce the vulnerability and risk connected both to, we can say, the ecosystem, but also as well to the human communities. So, without further ado, I think that we can open now the floor to the keynote speaker. I will give just briefly the floor to my co-chair, Professor Ferrante, that since the first edition of this One Health conference, as you can say, we joined forces properly to like try to tackle this problem that we were talking before. So I'll give the floor to Professor Ferrante. Thank you very much, Margherita.
Thank you, Domenico. This cooperation for One Health vision in a global world is very important for me. Thank you to Mr. Klemnis for and to their teams for the cooperation and the support in this important Congress. And not only the climate change and the climate crisis is important, but in this moment is very crucial the war systems in all our world, because the war has exacerbated these problems on the planetary health. And so properly, we will face in this Congress also children and women health and the mental health of this specific population, because in climate change time, in a war time, this population are very, very fragile, and so we have to give some support in a global vision to have a better world. And a better world is a resilient world, is true, but we have to face to be resilient the fragility of the ecosystems, of the urban systems, and especially in many countries in the world, the possibility to give support to the healthy systems, because the healthy systems is in crisis in some countries, is absent in other countries. So we have to support these systems and give support also to the health benefit that we can have with more support for children maternal health. So this is our topics, and not only new virus or new bacteria, but also antimicrobial resistance. So common bacteria, common microorganisms can be very important for us, and we can have some health consequences, because antimicrobial resistance is a new pandemic. So I can think that this conference is an important opportunity to work together to explain all the problems and to give support and some suggestions for the resolution of this problem. Thank you, and enjoy your conference.
Thank you very much, Margherita, and thank you for these years of collaboration and fruitful collaboration. So now let's start, as I said, with the keynote guests. For the sake of time, Dr. Grammenos Mastrojeni will not be joining here, but he will send a video. So we have a video of him that we will show later. And also His Excellency Adonis Georgatis will join later, because he has some institutional commitments. So I'm honored to give the floor to Dr. Phoebe Koundouri, professor in economics at Athens University, and is also president of EAERE and chair of SDSN Global Climate Hub and co-chair of the SDSN Europe. It's an honor, a pleasure. The floor is yours.
Can I have the change of slider? I'm very happy to be here. Thank you very much for inviting me. The topic of the conference is truly important, and we need to understand how we can transform the world towards One Health. Let me quickly say that my team is a team that is working on the science policy interface of the transformation towards sustainability. And it's a team that has a very solid, multidisciplinary, interdisciplinary systems approach. And I think this is the approach we need to engage with in order to manage the multi-crisis away from multi-crisis towards sustainability. So if I had to change the slides, I would do what? Okay, so until we get the slides right, let me also say, in addition to what my good friend Dr. Gremlis said, we have another very vivid crisis. Of course, it's the destabilization of climate. Of course, it's the biodiversity collapse. Of course, it's the population crisis. So how can I have the keyboard?
Sure.
That will be fine. Yeah. No, don't worry. Okay. I can manage from here. Okay. No, yeah, I can manage. Okay, of course we have the population crisis. Of course we have the inequality crisis between the global north and the global south, but there is also a very difficult economic crisis. We have slow growth, very small percentages of growth. We have inflationary pressures. We have shrinking fiscal spaces in all countries, both the global north and the global south. And we have 1/3 of the countries at default. This means that governments do not have the space, the fiscal space, to invest. And in order to get away from the climate crisis, the biodiversity crisis, the health crisis, the population crisis, we need investments, and we need financing for these investments. In 2015, we transformed the Millennium Goals into UN Agenda 2030. And we decided that this is our manual from escaping the multi-crisis. And it is indeed a very science-based, systems-based, interdisciplinary, intradisciplinary, meaning co-designing with the stakeholders, holistic framework that if we understand it, and if we transpose it into policy, and if these policies are implemented, then we can really escape the multi-crisis. So the challenge is not that we don't know what to do. The challenge is not that we don't have the scientific capacity to do it. The challenge focuses on the ability to transpose the scientific capacity into implementable pathways and get everybody on board, engage all stakeholders in order to really implement the SDGs. Now, this is the Alliance of Excellence for Research and Innovation on IFORIA. This is my team, which works in 120 countries around 6 continents, on both the research and innovation projects with massive competitive research funding, probably the most successful team around Europe and maybe beyond in terms of attracting research funding, but also working very much on innovation acceleration, technological innovation, social innovation, fiscal and financial innovation, and at the same time understanding the huge importance of the science policy interface to design policies that are science-based, that are correct, and enable the stakeholders with the capacity of implementing those policies. And within that, we have a lot of work with the UN Sustainable Development Solutions Network. I co-chair the European Hub and I chair the Global Climate Hub, and I'm going to come back to that. Finally, we work with many scientific academies that I am a member of, and also scientific associations like the World Association of Environmental Resource Economists, which I am the president of, with the aim to bring the great minds into this interdisciplinary, holistic, and systems-based approach to produce the pathways that the society and the economy needs to embark on in order to achieve the transition. So I won't go through the slides on the different projects. It's okay. I will just, thank you very much. I will just say that we need 3 explicit steps to transform our work from a multi-crisis place towards a sustainable development place. The first thing is to be able to transpose the SDGs, which at the moment is the only global agenda together with the Charter of Human Rights. So we have 17 goals, 169 targets, and these are an explicit framework for moving away from where we are to a sustainable development. Now, this is a framework, it's a science framework, basically, that regulates the interaction between the biosphere, the economy, and the society. And we should all be clear that this is not about the environment. There are 4 goals that are focused on environmental systems, 8 goals that are focused on social systems, and 4 goals focused on economic systems. And the last one is about collaboration, SDG 17. So it's an integrated, multi-layer framework that goes beyond sustaining the environment. It's about sustainable development, the optimal and sustainable intergenerational interaction of environmental systems, social systems, and environmental and economic systems. Now, it is true what George said, it is true that Europe is the leadership example of transposing this framework into a policy framework, because you need the policy framework. You need the laws, the regulations, the directives, the policies that are going to accelerate the transition towards the implementation of the SDGs. And of course, this is the European Green Deal. 4 major axes: climate neutrality by 2050, which is more sensible than the 2030 SDG 13 goal. Protection of the environment, clean tech leadership of European companies, and leaving no one behind. And then these 4 axes can be transposed into many different policies and regulations and laws. And they have also been transposed into national laws. So we have 27 countries that have a very good policy transposition of the SDGs framework. There are other efforts to translating the SDGs into a policy framework in the US, in Asia, in Australia. Let me say that being an advisor to many of these efforts, I think the European is not perfect, but is the best one we have in terms of the scientific correctness of the background. I'm not going to go through the different laws and regulations. These are a very high-level description of the laws and regulations. I'm just going to say that they are there, and they set our target, where we want to go. So first, we know where we want to go. The second point is to know where we are. The Sustainable Development Solutions Network every year issues a report which includes the performance of each and every country in the world against the 17 SDGs and against the 169 targets, using about 250 to 300 KPIs. This is an attempt of SDSN Global to give you a precise understanding of where you are. Because in order to design the pathways of change, you need to know where you are and where you want to go. And unfortunately, this framework shows this performance calculator shows a lot of reds, which means red is that we are below 50% of implementation. Here, I give you the global map of the 4 environment systems: the climate, the land use, the marine use, and the food systems. And you can see a lot of reds everywhere. I co-authored the European report because I am the chair of SDSN Europe with 900 universities involved. And there you can see that Europe is about 72% in terms of implementation. It's definitely the leader in implementing the SDGs. And it's definitely a good example, but still far away from achieving the goals to 2030. It's unthinkable And we can even downscale this to country level, to city level, to local authority level, to regions within the country, even to institutions and companies. This is a framework that we transpose as EAERE to many different layers. So there is no excuse. We know where we are. We have a framework on measuring where we are, and we know where we want to go. We have the SDGs and their transpositions into a policy framework. Let me reaffirm that we are not going to make the 2030 deadline, but it is important to keep the same goals until 2050, which is a possible deadline that we can perform well against. And it is important to keep them because it is a framework that works, and it is a framework that has been integrated into many governmental policies and international policies. And here, just to indicate that it is possible to use this framework of measurement even for companies. So it's a very usable framework that gives you a lot of information and also allows you to continuously monitor and assess your progress. Very quickly, I'm going to jump to the Global Climate Hub of SDSN that I chair with almost 100 postdocs working on this hub with a mission to create detailed decarbonization and climate resilience pathways for all the countries in the world. The methodology is very systems-based, and it has been explained in a Nature publication last year. So the Global Climate Hub is a multi-layer hub with 3 different layers. The first is the interdisciplinary mathematical modeling that allows the application of climate downscaling, energy decarbonization pathways, transport pathways, decarbonization and resilience pathways, same pathways for the land use system, the marine use system, the health system, the innovation system, and then all these mathematical models integrated into socioeconomic models to give you the ways to finance the transition and the ways to protect for those that are vulnerable to this transition. So it's a interdisciplinary mathematical modeling layer that derives pathways to climate neutrality and climate resilience with a very integrated systems approach. No such approach has ever been developed or implemented. And we think it is important to be implemented in this way because it has to be very interdisciplinary and integrate all systems. And here, health is one big element, the health of humans, having to do with both mental and physical health and the effects of extreme weather conditions deriving from climate change and also biodiversity collapse. And at the same time, not just health, but also, as I said before, the land use, which includes the food systems, the forest systems, the marine use, which includes the seas and ocean systems and coastal systems, the energy and the transport systems, all under climate change scenarios derived by IPCC. The second layer, which works together with the scientific layer, is the intradisciplinary layer, where you include and engage and co-design with the stakeholders. There is no way to design anything that is going to be implemented unless you give the capacity to all relevant stakeholders at different scales to co-design the transition with you. They need to understand the problems, understand the solutions, approve the financing, approve the socioeconomic effects of the transition, and then become shareholders, not just stakeholders, shareholders of the transition. And finally, we have a big layer, which is the data applications. And of course, data models, digital platform, which we're going to launch in COP in Azerbaijan, which is an open infrastructure which contains all the data, AI constantly updated, all the models, the results, and also providing e-tools for stakeholders' engagement, and also providing seminars and training for different stakeholders in different countries to use the data, to use the results, to use the models, to get advice on any aspect of the detailed decarbonization and resilience pathways we propose. How many minutes do I have? 1, 2? 2. Okay, so this is the energy modeling for the whole of Europe. This is the optimal allocation of sources of energy across Europe and the optimal green corridors. This is the model that optimizes food systems, Fable, and then we integrate with marine systems. This is our publication on pathways for food and land use systems in Greece. We also integrate the remote sensing to make the models more detailed and more informed, and we connect the energy and the land use models through water requirement models. So there is a lot of work on integrating these mathematical models. Is really difficult, but it needs to happen, and it will get better and better over the years. We have a lot on extreme events, extreme hazards, and what's the optimal way to hedge against them. What resilience means in terms of managing ecosystems that are hotspots of extreme weather events, marine models, shipping models, integrated in the oceans and seas models, and integrated with land use models at the interaction of the coast. And of course, a lot of innovation. We have 3 big accelerators currently incubating about 300 startups and spin-offs. And we also work with UNFCCC Innovation Hub in upscaling our work globally. And finally, a lot on economics, on monetizing natural value and cultural value, all the values that are external to markets and are values that are basic for supporting human welfare. So we put together a global platform that allows you to monetize different ecosystem services at first, and then cultural services using the provisioning, regulating, habitat, and cultural services categorization, which is a globally accepted scientific categorization, and monetizing all these services. Why is it important? It is important because when you do cost-benefit analysis on which investments and how to implement the SDGs, you need to have the values not only of produced capital, the accounting capital, the buildings, the machinery, not only of human capital, but also of natural capital. And when you do that, then you have a really holistic understanding of what is the values, the cost and benefits of different alternative interventions. And finally, it is important that you get the financing for what you do in order to implement. I am an advisor in G20, and one basic issue today is how we can restructure the global financial architecture in order to get the financial resources streamlined, not only to the global north, but also to the global south. It is important to have an SDG stimulus in the global south with low interest rates, with long-run projects. And in order to achieve this, you need to de-risk the needed investments in the global south, and you can do that only with public-private partnerships. Finalizing, and this is my last word, I promise, all this you can design. We have the science and the technology and the fiscal and financial instruments to design this. However, to implement, you need the capacity of the stakeholders. And unfortunately, the capacity of the stakeholders is not there. Last year in COP in Dubai, we've presented a report that showcases that 85% of the occupations and skills that are needed to implement the European Green Deals, the laws that have been transposed into national laws. These are the laws that we have to implement today. 85% of what is needed in terms of skills and occupations is not yet in the labor market. So we need a big wave of investment on education, upskilling, and reskilling. Thank you very much.
I just take the floor to thank very much Phoebe Koundouri. Very appreciate your presentation. I think that in this framework is where it's important to transmit these messages. So thank you very much, Phoebe. I will give the floor to Professor Ferrante to announce the next keynote.
Thank you, Phoebe. Very, very interesting presentation, and you have presented crucial remarks and terms for this One Health resilience and growing. So I will present Antonis Kolimenakis, Technical Officer, Climate Change and Health at WHO Headquarters. Thank you, Antonis, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair. And I would like also to thank the organizers and the distinguished participants for giving us the opportunity to present the work that we are promoting at WHO. So I'm speaking on behalf of our team, which is the Climate Change and Health team at WHO HQ. And I will say a few words on why climate change and health is really a priority for WHO, considering, of course, all those important remarks that we've already heard by the chairs, by Mr. Kremlis and Dr. Koundouri. So I don't know if we can project some slides or. No. Maybe let me position a bit on some of the remarks that have been already mentioned, and starting from Mr. Kremlis. I think he emphasized the importance of the challenges that we face at the policy level to elevate the agenda, and specifically for health. We might understand that this is even more of a challenge because health is a sector that is now coming up on a higher level of advocacy, on a higher level of, I would say, global traction and global attention. And in this respect, it is great that we have similar events like the one organized today to make sure that we bring this agenda forward. And also, I would also like to really echo the remarks by Dr. Koundouri. And I think she emphasized in an excellent way on how important it is to translate all those evidence, the research evidence, but as well as the outcomes that we have coming out of scientific data to make sure that all this can be forwarded to important decision making. And yesterday I heard our honorable minister speaking at the World Health Summit in Berlin and mentioning the importance of transmitting the correct information and the danger that we have from false information, accrediting as well the work of WHO. And I think in this respect, it is important to organize similar events to showcase the importance and the impact that climate change has on health. And we in the Mediterranean have been really unfortunate and timely to see the direct effects of climate change on health. We experienced extreme heats. We still see the temperature, for example, as we witness it today, being quite high. And this has, of course, different impacts in different sectors. That brings up more challenges, like the challenges on One Health outcomes related to the spread of diseases, related to the spread of different vectors, I think. And I've had a look on the overall schedule. There will be very interesting presentations showcasing exactly these impacts that are upcoming. We have the example of new mosquito vectors, for example, the Aedes vectors that might be in a position to transmit diseases like dengue, which we have not experienced in the Mediterranean in the past. But also we need to secure our health systems. In this respect, in securing the overall health system, WHO promotes a series of activities from securing both climate resilience as well as the sustainability and decarbonization of the health systems. Of course, there are certain actions which are related to promoting the health national adaptation plans, which should be in accordance to the overall national strategies like the National Adaptation Plan, making sure that all the evidence is well recorded into vulnerability and adaptation assessments, but as well as championing the health sector, because the health sector globally is culpable for around 6% of the global emissions. So in this respect, specifically for the countries of the global north, it is important to promote specific decarbonization strategies. And at this point, I would like to mention that one of the big challenges for climate and health is the low financing. And just to echo the points raised on the fiscal constraints and the low budgets that exist at the country's level. So if we can really take this picture for the global south, we can understand for example, how big is the problem is, especially for countries that are not responsible for the global emissions. But of course, climate change is a problem that leaves, unfortunately, using the UN logo, the UN motto, no one behind. So the strategy should be global, and we all understand that climate change is an issue that can be tackled only through global initiatives. And talking about global initiatives, I think the COPs were already mentioned. These are very important conferences organized by the UNFCCC. For us, for WHO, the COP26 has been a really important COP because a very important initiative was launched, which is called the COP26 Health Commitments. On building climate resilient and sustainable low carbon health systems. And all this initiative is now monitored through a global network, which is called the ATACH. This stands for the Alliance for Transformative Action on Climate and Health. There are 86 countries that have committed to the ATACH and the COP26 health commitments. And by committing, we mean the submission of a signed letter of engagement by ministries of health, which means by the whole government. And I take this opportunity to try all together and increase this number to 87 to bring Greece on board, recognizing the impacts that Greece faces, recognizing the strategic position of Greece in the Mediterranean, and of course recognizing the policy impact that the country can bring on the overall global policy making field. And for us, the COP28 has been a really important COP because we had the chance to organize the first ever Health Day and the first ever interministerial. So we had the chance and the luck to be in a position to hear important pledges and commitments. For example, commitments by different donors, philanthropies, and big funding institutions like the Green Climate Fund on securing more funds and more financing, also along with the support of development banks and multilateral development banks and the World Bank, to elevate the importance of climate and health financing. And of course, we now stand to. Yeah, I think I've gone slideless, but yeah. Yeah, let me. Yeah, maybe just for the sake of having these slides, I would like to present. This is an important framework that we use and we promote at countries. It's called the operational framework, and it has different components. Most of the elements in these components have been already highlighted by the previous speakers, and also One Health is incorporated. Issues like the antimicrobial resistance, which is also very high on the agenda today, are incorporated on different activities that are promoted through this component. As I said, WHO is supporting countries with different projects and different layers of financing, but it still stands as a big challenge because just to also offer a global figure, out of the global climate financing, health receives, according to estimates, around 0.5 to 2%. So we still understand what is the capacity and what is the opportunity to support health within this agenda. Yeah, we talked about.
In research in health?
Yes, we also mean research in health. Yeah. As we talked a bit about the attacks already, so there are different thematic groups which are organized in the attacks that follow the different trends, and of course, One Health is an important component, both within the resilience, but also in these overall efforts to support the global advocacy and financing needs. And maybe I would like to finish by saying that also in this respect, it is important to understand the importance of a cross-sectoral collaboration, because health is a sector that, as we said, is gaining a lot of attention, but it really has to be prioritized within the overall government priorities. So recognizing the importance of health outcomes out of climate change is an important step to make sure that health can be in the forefront and can be one of the big priorities for countries to secure the health of the population, specifically when we talk about most vulnerable population like child and maternal health. And of course, we can understand that, and I would like to finish by this, by saying that and repeat actually, that the challenges of that climate change poses on health is horizontal and leaves no one behind. And as stated by our Director General, Dr. Tedros, climate crisis is indeed a health crisis. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Antonis, and sorry for the technical problem. So thank you very much for we can have the, thank you. Yes. So before going to the sessions, now we will open the, you can say, thematic session. I want to share with you a message from another person that has led this conference possible. He's Grammenos Mastrojeni, is the Deputy Secretary General of the Union for Mediterranean. Actually, is the person that connected me and George properly to organize this conference. And he strongly believes also that as a deputy of the Union for Mediterranean, it is a big organization that is working on the Mediterranean, that One Health is the future, as also Antonis say, also for tackling the climate crisis. If we want to address the climate crisis, we cannot avoid to consider health as a component. So I will share his message. Unfortunately, for institutional commitment, he cannot join, but he wanted to share his thoughts by a video. So let me just arrange. Oh. No, I think that in this way is not good to see. Okay. Yeah. And also the sound.
Yes. Just click share. Yes, it's cool.
Okay.
Then
Okay.
play.
Good morning, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends. The link between health, environment, and climate is much deeper than what is usually considered. It is not only about the fact that a disrupted environment and a crazy climate impact human physiology. The inner link is that whatever you do to protect human health is also the pathway to solve the climate crisis and the environmental degradation and, let us use the real word, meltdown. It is not by chance that if you eat in a way that protects your health, your diet is sustainable. It is not by chance that if you choose a way to transport yourself that protects your physiological, individual, mental, societal health, it tends to be the most sustainable. This is just the fruit of co-evolution. We evolved together with the natural system, so it is only normal that we are at the top of our well-being if we are in tune with the ecosystem, which is not true if we destroy it. This is not only philosophy. I'm really sorry I'm not there with you, because I believe more and more that you, medical doctors, are one of our only hopes. People might believe or might not believe to politicians. People might trust people like me, administrators, negotiators, or maybe they don't trust me, but they listen to their doctor. If the doctors start telling, you can save the world if you are happy, you can save the world if you are healthy, you can save the world if you give up those non-services that, while they pollute your day, they also pollute the environment around you. Those non-services that make you breathe particulate, that make you eat plastics, then there is a chance that people start to move. There is no way the climate crisis and the environmental demise can be solved top-down. It can only come from a new awareness by the people. I am not able to inject it. I am in politics and administration. But you doctors, you can do that. So I'm really sorry once again not to be with you, but I really count on you. I remember last year at COP28 in Dubai, the most striking scene of all, a group of doctors with a planet Earth, auscultating it and giving it care. This is the message. What's good for you is good for your planet. What's good for your planet is good for you. And the end result of it all is called One Health. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Grammenos, even if you're not with us, but I think that it's important, and I want to stress that the fact that this conference has been patronaged by the Union for Mediterranean, it gives us more responsibility properly to address this problem. On this, I will give the floor back to the co-chair. So, Dr. Ferrante, please.
Thank you, Domenico. First keynote are now on the ecosystem resilience and responsiveness. This is two big drivers for the planetary health, and so we will start with Augustine Arukwe, that come from Norwegian University for Science and Technology. Thank you, Augustine, for being here with us, and the floor is yours.
Yeah. It's opening. It's a big presentation.
I will say in Italian, the beautiful of the direct.
Yes. Okay. Okay. In the meanwhile, maybe we can introduce, or if you want to introduce yourself in the meanwhile that it's opening the presentation.
Okay. First of all, I would like to thank the organizers for the invitation to be here. You've heard a little bit about a lot of policies, but I'm an empirical scientist that use the scientific concept in understanding two of the most challenging consequences of mankind today, climate change and pollution. So I'm going to focus my presentation on that, basically. And I will first of all apologize to some people if my presentation sounds too technical. It's just the nature of it. Certain things in science cannot be simplified more than it is necessary. But I will do my best to explain them. I am a molecular toxicologist by training, and I basically study ecotoxicology and their consequences to health, environmental health, biota, and human health. If we get there. Thank you very much. So I took the privilege to, structure and define my presentation as system toxicology and metabolic disorder under One Health. and I'm going to focus on how contaminants and climate change affect this.
Just a second. Okay. You can go. Sorry. Please.
It's okay. Let's go back a little bit. Oh, okay. Okay, thank you. Now we go. First of all, I just want to give a small introduction about oceans, because a lot of the pollutants we produce these days end up in the ocean. And of course, it's also ocean current and the physicochemical properties in the ocean contribute a lot in driving the climate change consequences. Oceans have been recognized as the basis for our existence because
Sorry,
Just share.
Okay.
Let please
Okay.
share.
Sorry, just a moment for share with the audience online.
okay.
On the current.
Right.
Okay. Okay. We did, please. Sorry.
Thank you. So the oceans play. This is not working. Thank you. Because oceans play a wider role in human health as more oxygens are produced, provided to the Earth's atmosphere by oceanic photosynthesis than all terrestrial plants combined. And it also is an essential component of the water cycle, and also play a significant role as the main source of food for a large proportion of the Earth's population through protein supply, among other things. And also, it receives a lot of contaminants. You know, they normally say that out of sight is out of mind. And all those contaminants that are dumped into the oceans become invisible for us. And of course, it's considered as the richest potential for new drugs and to treat human illness in the so-called blue economy concept that is common these days. When you look at the dynamics of contaminants in the environment, we receive a large sum of contaminants through wastewater discharge treatment plants that go into the air, then transported through atmospheric transport or through oceanic transport, get into areas where normally you are not expected to see them, particularly in the Arctic. You know, I have worked with colleagues contaminant levels and their effects in polar bears in the Arctic, where there is no particular industries or contaminant production there. And of course, as you might have heard, the Arctic is one of the most threatened environments with regard to climate change, as the ice and the glacier depreciation is happening at a rapid pace. And of course, you know, when we discharge influence, they somehow end up in our food through transport, through agriculture, through water runoffs, end up in our food table, and then recycle back to affecting health and well-being of human beings. But the area that I'm going to focus my presentation mostly is the concept that when you look at toxicophysiological responses in all animals and in human beings, look at overt morphological changes in animals, and look at clinical manifestations regardless of animal or species, all of them have what we call molecular basis, meaning that before you have a clinical manifestation of a cancer patient, what you see is tumor. But before that, there has been a molecular and cellular warfare within that individual that translates to that. And then you can take that to overt morphological changes, toxicological responses. And because of that, if you capture effects in human beings or animals as they happen at the molecular and cellular levels, there's still hope and chance to make remedial intervention and change the trajectory of the consequences. Otherwise, when it gets past molecular and cellular level, it's a little bit too late. Biological responses, as we know it from a historical perspective, is based on approaches that is used to monitor environmental consequences of contaminants, and of course, climate change. Historically, we try to evaluate changes in whole organisms, and then with limitations that ecosystems may not be significantly impacted, and we don't see that. And then we have alternative approaches where we evaluate molecular and biological biochemical changes, prediction and predictive endpoints, and then use the advanced outcome pathways in order to understand the consequences that contaminants have in organisms. And of course, today we have advanced approaches, which is what I call system toxicology, where we look at toxicological consequences from cellular, molecular to organismal level, transforming it to ecosystem on individual levels, and of course, understanding the general pathways that happen in an organism before it translates to health consequences. But my attention will focus on one particular molecular pathway, which is the peroxisome proliferate activated receptors, otherwise known as metabolic sensors. There are numerous reports linking homeostasis of lipids and the obesity to pollutants, in many ways. What are PPAR? As many of you might know, these are metabolic sensors that basically regulate how we dispose and manage lipids in the body. You find them in blood walls, in muscles, in adipose tissues, in the liver. And of course, what they do is that they regulate adipogenesis and how we dispose and manage lipids in the body. We have seen previously that this effect on PPAR is regarded as part of what we call the endocrine disrupting pathways in animals. These are chemicals that interfere with the body's hormone system, potentially affecting metabolism, reproduction, behavior pattern, and appetite, and regulate fat storage in the body. And these contaminants include pesticide, plastic additives, flame retardants, PCP, personal pharmaceuticals and personal care products, surfactants, metals, and industrial chemicals, among others. And among these are the group of chemicals that we regard as environmental obesogens, which are these chemicals that have endocrine disrupting capabilities that can promote fat accumulation in the body and weight gain in disrupting the body hormones of animals. And also, they can also interfere, these obesogens, with leptin and ghrelin, which are hormones that regulate appetite and energy balance in animals, and also thyroid and estrogen hormones and PPARs that also regulate metabolic processes in animals. And also can produce insulin sensitivity by increasing fat storage in the body. So the common source of EDCs include natural products, food packaging, and of course, as most of you know today, it is absolutely impossible to go to a grocery store and buy a food that is not packaged in plastic. So that's where my focus is going to be shortly. But regardless of animal, the disposition, metabolism of lipids is just the same. This is what brings into the system toxicology concept, like I said earlier. So, for instance, in case if you don't know, any body with a body mass index of 30 and above is clinically regarded as obese. In animal, for example, in fish, which is my favorite study animal, when you have a condition factor in fish that is 2 or above, we said that the fish is doing good. But in reality, the fish is obese. But in fish, against human beings, it's used as a measure of well-being in fish. Condition index is the relationship between weight and length in fish. So, plastics. I am pretty sure that you have a little bit, we have a little bit concept of plastic pollution in Europe as you find in developing countries. I was born and brought up in Nigeria. I still do a lot of work in Nigeria up to today. This is a classical environment that you can see in an average place in Nigeria, in Ghana, in Tanzania, in South Africa, places that I have worked a lot and still work a lot in. And this is a solid waste dump site in an area that we have done a lot of studies in Nigeria. You know, I will recommend for those interested to read the paper because we sampled and measured phthalate esters in this solid waste dump site. And down the river where the trees are, there's a river there. And the day we did this sampling here, I saw some kids, you know, swimming in this small river. And then we measured phthalate esters in this area, seeing enormous amount of phthalate esters in this area. And of course, all the runoff from the dump site end up in that river. So the question here is, plastics of course, a lot of people have so much focus on microplastics, but I am much worried about the contaminants that are in plastic than the plastic themselves, because plastics are solid waste problems, but the contaminants that make plastic flexible, this one, they are the big problem. Because these contaminants, these chemicals that phthalate esters, they are not covalently bound to the plastic polymer. So if you expose this plastic to uncomfortable environmental situation from changing temperature, pH, among other things, a certain amount of those contaminants would leak out into the environment. And that's what the problem is. And I'm going to show you a little bit example of that, you know. So what are plastic? We regard them as vectors for contaminants of emerging concern in the aquatic environment, also in the terrestrial environment too. Despite their magnitude of plastic contamination in aquatic environment, there's only limited scientific information and understanding about the ecotoxicology and the human health risk, both macro and microplastics. Of course, this has increased a lot in recent times, because if you go to the literature and compare science that has related plastic contamination in 5 years ago, and now you will see that the trajectory has been enormous. And plastic are used for multiple applications, including household and other industrial products, clothing, and from packaging to industrial materials. And also, while the benefits of plastic are recognized, we know that they have serious environmental and human health concerns associated with them. Phthalate esters, bisphenol A, among others. And then it is estimated, this is 10,000 data anyways, that 4.8 to 12.7 million tons of plastic waste end up into the environment. And in developed countries, like I have showed, there is very limited processes to manage plastic waste compared with what you see in developed world, you know, and that's a big problem. What are emerging contaminants? These are contaminants that we use in our everyday lives. They go from those that we use in medicine, like PPCPs, drugs, soaps, disinfectants. They are chemical additives, preservatives, and all those ones that represent serious consequences for biota health and human health. And these are collectively regarded as contaminants of emerging concern for everybody. So my question is, which I normally ask, does the so-called environmental obesogens represent a significant threat to beach bodies? Because some people might have it that, you know, there is a huge difference between animals. I work with fish mainly, and human beings. In my world as a molecular toxicologist, there's no big difference between me as a man and a male fish in the ocean or in a river, in molecular and cellular pathway, because all the molecules that human beings use are the same molecules that fish and other animals use. So if it can affect a human being, animal one way, it will affect a human being in a similar way. The problem we have is that we cannot use human beings for empirical research, but we can get more fish, more mice, and do science. But we cannot go to the market square here and say, okay, who wants to eat poison, and let's see how it works. We don't know, but we can extrapolate, which is what I'm going to show you a little bit shortly. So phthalates has been a problem for many years, and there has been an effort to phase out certain phthalate esters from the environment. But the problem with, you know, we had a lot of policy here, a statement here. The problem is when you replace these compounds with something else, there's always something that made it to be important. But that's also what makes it to be dangerous, but it takes time before we know that. For example, there has been effort to replace phthalate esters with this group of phthalate that was assumed to be very metabolic, that it can be degraded in the environment. Of course, a lot of surfactants went through the same process. And this is the isodecyl phthalate. And what we did when this compound came into the market was to try to see whether it's a little bit better than the classical phthalate esters. And what we did was to use molecular docking to see whether this compound will bind to the PPAR in a molecular docking process. And then after that, we use the energy of the molecular docking to go and do in vitro experiment to see whether there's a relationship between this and the PPAR metabolic process. Also, there's another one, which is also a replacement for phthalate ester, which is called tri-M-crysyl phosphate, which is one of the organophosphate esters. This is supposed to be a replacement for phthalate. We also did a similar thing. What we saw was that these compounds, they were even more dangerous in terms of activating PPAR in fish hepatocytes than the classical phthalate esters. But they are the ones in the market now.
2 minutes for you.
2 minutes, I've only gone halfway to my slide, but okay, thank you. And also we have also seen that fish that are exposed to environmental contaminants produce intersex in different ways. These are from a Nigerian environment. And then these same fish that are producing intersex, we try to look at them to see whether, they have very good condition factor. And what we saw that these fish that were, having endocrine disrupting chemicals, they were looking good with a very good condition index. And then we try to look at these fish, whether, why are they having serious chemical and metabolic process and still having good conditions. And then what we saw that the condition factors were good above 2, and that then sometimes they were producing high activation level of PPAR in this fish species, showing that these fish, they were really obese, not that they were healthy in the common sense, but they are really obese. And of course, I don't know, because I have 2 minutes, I have the similar examples from mice that we have studied, looking at how the PFAS, produce regulation of lipids and relationship between hepatosomatic index and lipid level in different mice species exposed to contaminants. And also, I think, maybe because of time, I'm going to jump over this, but these are how relevance of transcriptomics with quantitative profile in lipids in the ovary of a fish called ovary, showing the relationship between gene expression pattern and the lipid profile in the cord ovary. And also the showing hydrolyzed fatty acids in mice liver in relation to PFAS exposure in mice. And then when you look at this collectively, environmental obesity genes have been shown to activate several molecular initiating events in animals, and then this translates to key events like alteration of lipid metabolism, then to adverse outcome that include alter lipid homeostasis and metabolism disorder in animals, in different animals, both from humans and other animals. And then to conclude, protecting our environment under One Health approach basically is very, very important because it has ecological, biodiversity, and human health benefit and consequences. And of course, it's an ethical thing to do. And further, it has cultural and aesthetic significance so that people will have to use the environment in a very cultural and aesthetic way. And of course, it has economic consequences because it has been estimated that obesity is one of the driving economic costs for several economies in the world today due to treatment and the management of obesity. So environmental pollution is a question about right and moral responsibility. So the question is, do we have any right to pollute the environment that affect human health and animal health? The answer would be no to any reasonable person. And again, do we have moral responsibility to protect the environment for our generation and the generation of our children and children? Every reasonable person will answer, yes, we have the moral responsibility. And with that, I would like to thank the students, the research fellows, collaborators, and funding agencies that have contributed in the thing I have presented. And thank you for listening.
Thank you, Augustine. Very interesting presentation.
Am I supposed to take questions?
Yes. The question now, Domenico. Okay, you have the question?
Yes.
Please.
How about the pharmaceutical companies that drop in a lot of drugs into the ocean? What can you say about that? Affects us as humans.
Yes, that's a very interesting question, and you know, the reason why I put the word economics there is that it's always a problem to translate science to economic, you know, gains. And the problem we have as scientists is that we always have problems translating our science to pharmaceutical companies for them to understand that this is a win-win situation. It's not one against the other. It's just like we, you know, benefit from, you know, coexistence. So, of course, this kind of thing doesn't happen in Europe so much, but in North America, it's a very, very big problem where not only pharmaceutical companies, but companies that produce industrial chemicals, you know, have problem understanding that they should, you know, function in an environmental sustainable manner. So I don't know what else to say about that, but I have been in situations in a room where I try to talk to these kind of people to tell them you need to exist, but it's not an easy thing. And I can tell you one story, you know, if I may. When we were doing some of the PFAS studies, we were trying to study one PFAS compound that is a kind of precursor to PFOS. And then we tried to order this from Waymaking Chemical. They said they don't sell it anymore. And then we tried to get it from China, you know. And then we sent a message, and this guy said, oh, okay, he can send us this because this is not allowed in Europe. We can send you as much as you want. So I said, no, we just want 100 milligram, you know. And he said, oh, he sent his bank account for put the money. I said, we can't do that. I said, okay, the minimum we can sell is 20 kilo. But you can't buy it in Europe. But if that guy want to send it somewhere in Africa, it will not be a problem for him to send one ton, one trailer, one container load to Africa. But this is the problem. Banned in Europe, controlled in Europe, but in China, it's available and you can get it as many as you want. So I don't know whether that answered your question, but it's a little bit tricky situation to work with science and the people that want to make money with complete disregard of every other thing. More.
Please, Mohammed.
That's very nice. Okay. Thank you. So thank you very much for this very nice presentation. Well, my question will be about the lipid metabolism. And whatever, as far as you know, probably in your own research or probably from literature, is there any evidence of any lipid metabolism shift in presence of microplastic at a body level? I mean, we have some evidence at cellular level, but at the body level, I mean that if people are exposed to microplastic, this will have an incidence on obesity, for example. Could it make sense?
Yes. One issue, of course, this needs to be tried empirically. One thing I have to say is that you know, the biggest problem with microplastics is the problem of biomass. So if you have, let's say, 0.000001 nanogram of, let's say, pallet ester in one unit of microplastic, and then in one organism you have, you know, I don't know how many that have been measured. I've seen as much as people counting like 600 pieces of microplastic. You can multiply that quantity by 600. Then you see that because of the biomass of microplastic, if these contaminants have the ability to leach out of microplastic, they will have the same consequence like you have with the macroplastics in. But of course, that needs to be tested empirically, you know. Yeah, particularly, I will maybe, this is something we have talked about a little bit before, having to see whether microplastics, of course, I have a colleague that has done something related, microplastics can activate PPAR regulation in cells, and then try to translate that to see whether that translates into membrane lipid profile in the cells as a measure of outcome of the activation of PPAR. That would be an interesting thing to test. Thank you.
Thank you, Augustine. Now the next keynote, Mohammed Banni, professor at University of Sousse. She's a very big toxicologist, so he give the light to us on these problems. Thank you, Mohammed. The floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you very much. Sorry, okay. So yeah, thank you very much. I would like first of all to thank the organizer for this very kind invitation and for giving me the floor to speak about something that deals with microplastic. I think that from the beginning we have to highlight what was also discussed this morning with the high panel of keynote speaker regarding the SDG and this so-called 17 SDG. And microplastic is within this 17 SDG mainly for the quality of our life and how microplastic could be something that impact heavily our health and our life. The second aspect is the One Health concept. I mean, microplastic are in the environment, so we have an unhealthy environment, then unhealthy animals, and in the end we will have this so-called unhealthy person. And it is a circular, let's say, stuff. So yes, there is no, I mean, we are not in the need of proof that microplastic are invading all of us and that microplastic are actually very harmful and very impacting human health. But I would like to start with this one. This very outstanding paper that have been published this year, where we have described for the first time the impact of microplastic on probably a species extinction, since microplastic are very tightly linked with infertility in marine organisms. So this paper described very well the effect of microplastic at the spermatozoa level. And this is a very frightening, I mean, a very shocking result that we get with microplastic in the environment. But my main focus is this one, and these two papers that have been recently published with Margherita Group regarding the presence of microplastic in food. I mean, in fish, edible fish, but also in fruits, vegetables. That means that we are directly exposed through dietary, through diet, but not only through diet, through also respiration of microplastic. We can breathe them. So we are really in contact, in direct contact with microplastic. So what was the challenge? The first, this is the word that I am very interested in. So to reveal whether microplastic can increase or not carcinogenicity in already cancer cells. A typical liver cancer cell, FG2, exposed to microplastic. So the idea was very simple. We have the bone marrow stem cell, the FG2 cells, and we provoked natural degradation of microplastic in a bottle of water, I mean polyethylene terephthalate, then filtered with the help of Margherita Group, Giulia in particular, to obtain the so-called teeny microplastic particle that are actually present here. And I will say the same thing that Augustine just said. So we are estimating something around 5,000 microplastic. And one also very shocking result is 1 million of microplastic in a cup of tea when you are making tea infusion. So this is a daily routine that we may expose it to. So these cells were already cancer cells. but what will be the effect of microplastic on these cancer cells? So our approach is a cellular aspect linked to the main protein that will derive apoptosis or not. So yes, so I will escape this. So the first result we obtained using these cells with annexin 5 showing the apoptosis is that microplastic will not have an effect on the apoptosis and the cell death of these cells. I mean, in control cells could die, but in exposed cells, not. So as if we have a resistance to apoptosis when these cells are exposed to microplastic. Yes, the second is the effect on tunnel and the degradation DNA alteration. And once again here we have a proof that DNA alteration is happening in control cells, but not in exposure to polyethylene terephthalate with size less than 1 micrometer, which is the worst in absolute. Yes, protein of apoptosis, BCL2, BAX, caspase-3, and also beta-actin as reference protein. And here again, we have this so-called shift toward a resistance to death. That means that these cells are continuing to proliferate and denying death pathway. So what will be the explanation of this? Key proteins involved in this pattern using immunofluorescence are showing the same aspect. I mean, these proteins are indicating that cells exposed to polyethylene terephthalate with the size mainly less than 1 micrometer are denying the death pathway and are continuing to proliferate, which is not the case for control. I will jump because it is the same, but with other key proteins, caspase, for instance, here, caspase-3. I mean, in control cells, caspase, which is the main effective protein, including the death of the cells, is downregulated at the protein level. We are not speaking about the gene expression level. Here is the protein level, so it's very effective. So why? This is our question. Why this is happening in these cancer cells? The response was found in a very, very, very old publication from the 19th. Something very old that described for the first time that it is possible that BCL2, which is the protein involved in the regulation of apoptosis, could be the key response. So BCL2 could be phosphorylated in one case, and this case is responsible of the chemioresistance in tumoral cells. The phosphorylation of BCL2 will lead to the activation of this protein and its translocation into the nucleus, and this is very rare. But in this case, if the BCL2 will translocate into the nucleus, she will deactivate the caspase. So in this way, you can imagine what we call chemioresistance or resistance to chemotherapy. So this is what is happening in our case, and I will skip. Yes, these are also but this is possible to understand only with the confocal analysis or imaging, showing that the BCL2 is now in the nucleus, which is very rare condition that BCL2 will go to the nucleus. Once in the nucleus, it is catastrophic for the cell. That means that the cell is undergoing a crucial resistance to cell death. So, yes, this is the very nice picture showing with the confocal imaging that the BCL2, once phosphorylated, it will undergo his path to the nucleus, blocking the caspase let's say, pathway. And that's why these cells are exhibiting the same behavior as if they are resistant to a chemotherapeutic. This was also, we tried to make the effect of a classical cancer therapy with the cisplatin, which is a classical chemotherapeutic, and it is very active in control cells, but not against cells exposed to microplastic. So this is the first proof that microplastic could increase the carcinogenicity of tumor cells. And this is really very worrying. And this is what is discussed this morning, that we need to have proofs that microplastic are really very harmful to our health. This is the first case. The second case, so we also draw what we call the intrinsic apoptotic pathway in presence of microplastic, and this will be sent for publication very soon. But it is the first time that we speak about this. And it was my pleasure to present, my pleasure, I'm sorry, but because it's very bad news, but to introduce this information here. So the second aspect is this. Stem cells, the bone marrow stem cells, and I will try to finish with this also very bad example, the bone marrow stem cells that are exposed to microplastic. The last year in Barcelona, I presented also this innovation in terms of knowledge that bone marrow stem cells under the effect of microplastic will be shifted toward adipocytes. That's why in certain way, I introduced my talk when I asked Augustine, is there any evidence of, let's say, induction of adipose, a shift toward adipocytes in human bodies. So this is the proof that last year when I presented this data, we talked about this so-called shift of adipocyte from the bone marrow stem cells under microplastic exposure to adipocytes, but we do not know why, neither which will be the pattern of the shift. Now we have a proof, a year of work, and we have the Orbitrap results showing the lipidome analysis of microplastic exposed cells. And here we introduced a new component, melatonin, to mitigate this so-called shift toward adipocytes. As you can see here, the very interesting thing that in control cells, you have some spontaneous differentiation toward adipocytes, which is normal. But beside adipocyte, you have chondrocyte and you have osteoblast too, which is the normal path. But under polyethylene terephthalate, you can see that the red, very intense red, is demonstrating the presence of high level of lipidic metabolites in the cells, showing this so-called shift toward adipocyte. The very promising now response that we get is that with melatonin, the last row, together with melatonin, which is a potent and very powerful antioxidant and also acting as anti-inflammation in anti-inflammatory pathway, all these metabolites are quite absent. That means that in the initiation of the differentiation, if you will add melatonin, the shift toward adipocyte will be controlled and probably, let's say, it is a protective effect, because we also tested the presence of melatonin after the addition of microplastic, and it didn't work. The only situation in which it works very good when we add melatonin together with microplastic, a very clear protective pathway. So yes, and this is also the key metabolite that we could find in the cell. And as you can see, I don't know which is the pointer. This one? No, sorry. Okay, yeah, this one. So you can see here the fatty acids. The fatty acid yes, this one is the first one is melatonin alone, but PET1, you have this so crucial increase of metabolites linked to lipid metabolism. But when you add together with melatonin, the polyethylene terephthalate particles, it goes down. So it is a real protective effect. So I will finish with this very bad news, but good news in terms of melatonin that could help in mitigating this. I'm very concerned when journal like Nature could publish this stupid affirmation. Microplastic are everywhere, but are they very harmful? I mean, as if they are asking for a proof against the harmful effect of melatonin, microplastic. And as scientists, I am very shocked about this, because the question could be in another way, showing that we are really concerned about microplastic. What could we do to mitigate microplastic? It could be more efficient for us, but asking the question in this way, as if we are really, yes, we are not very concerned about the effects. Yes, and Margherita, we had a lot of problem publishing very high quality papers showing the effect of microplastic on human health. It is much more easier to say that microplastic are affecting reproduction on muscles, who cares? But reproduction of humans, you have a block. Yes, I would like also to thank this very nice project Magno that has been accepted recently it is an Horizon Europe project, and the Magno project will deals with the effect of plastic packaging and migration of microplastic from the packaging to food in European societies. And yes, it is very interesting, and I hope that we will have a lot of results during this project. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mohammed. A very comprehensive presentation, and the problem is very big for us, because microplastics is a problem for the plastic industries, for the lobby of plastics. So this is a big threat for us. Do you have a question for Mohammed?
Yes, probably. I can see you.
Great presentation. I think
Thank
it's really relevant, especially here we're in the Mediterranean. Just a question. I know you mentioned that there could be some mitigation, some strategies that we can do as researchers. What can those be? And also, I'm curious to know if there has been any studies regarding, let's say, people that are living near coastal areas and having, let's say, more exposure to microplastics than perhaps other areas around the world. I don't know if there's any research on that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It is very important to address these 2 points. The first regarding what we are doing as scientists to mitigate the effect of microplastic. I think there is 2 levels where we can act directly. The prevention of the introduction of this microplastic into the environment. And this is the civil society that should also be very active. I'm very concerned about increasing awareness, mainly in schools, because it is the main target, I think. And through all my project, I'm trying to do this. So this at the societal level, but as the scientific level, I think that some solution could be related to mitigate the path of toxicity of microplastic. Augustine just said that, and it is true, I confirm it, that microplastic are toxic, not only for their physical effect, but also because they are leaking a lot of chemicals. And this is even more harmful when these microplastic are absorbed or are uptaken in the wild, I mean, in fish species or in plants. Because when we drink a bottle of water, it is true that we have a microplastic inside, but it is a polyethylene terephthalate, just it. It is harmful per se. But if you will eat a fish that have been exposed to microplastic in wild, it will be all the components that you can find in wild. So probably mitigating this could be one of the options that we are doing in our research, is using melatonin as key component that could reduce the inflammation and the oxidative stress pathway. With a group of a research group in University of Luigi Vanvitelli in Napoli, we are testing also some local beverage that have a beneficial effect on the rate of absorption at intestinal level. So shifting in somehow the microplastic to go and not to be absorbed at the epithelial level. So this is the first, but a lot of is indeed need to improve this this aspect. The second aspect is related to the, sorry, I forgot. No, but
I talked about it, there have been studies regarding people that are.
Yeah. I got, yeah. I think that the microplastic, as Augustine said, as the major contaminants will go through the oceans. The Mediterranean is one of the critical hotspot of microplastic, of macro and microplastic, but not only. So it is obvious that people living on the coast sides, eating fish, consuming sea products will be exposed to this threat. Along with Margherita, we produced a very nice paper on 2022, I think, on the presence and the fate of microplastic from edible fish. And we demonstrated that wild fish may contain a huge amount of microplastic in the flesh. And we also calculated the daily uptake with GIA. It was the daily uptake, no? Yeah, the daily uptake for children and for adults. And I can say that I can provide this paper, but our data were really very worrying about the exposure to microplastic from fish. It was also the same for fruits and vegetables. So the problem is there. We need to do something. I'm very worried about how people are considering this. But when I see Nature Research as the biggest journal asking wherever microplastic are really toxic or not, this is really very worrying. It is much more worrying than microplastic.
Mo,
thank you.
Well done on a very good presentation.
Thank you.
Just I have a comment and a question. Just on the one that you ended with now. About the Nature paper. I haven't read it, but I am unfortunately going to disagree with you on this one a little bit.
Yeah.
Because I personally think that the provocation is the main driver of scientific progression. And what that, when I saw the title of that paper, I basically see a provocation. And it's left for us as scientists to counter, that kind of comment and say, okay, here are the evidence. So I didn't see the stupidity in that thing as much as you do.
I agree with you in a certain kind, in a certain way. But the problem, Augustine, is that these papers, when it is true for us scientists, it is provocating.
Yeah.
But when normal people, I'm sorry for this, non-scientists are reading this, they are not provocated. No, they will say these scientists are saying stupid things, and Nature is confirming for us. Right. So non-scientists will trust Nature title more than us.
That's right. Then my question is, regarding the last slide you showed, where microplastic reduce the effect of melatonin. So
microplastic reduce the melatonin reduce the effect of microplastic. Yes,
that's correct. So what I was wondering is that, do you think it's possible that because both the effect of when they are put together, the effect was reduced compared with melatonin alone and microplastic alone?
Yeah.
Do you think it's possible that they reduce the bioavailability of each other? Not that they have direct consequence, but they reduce the bioavailability.
Yeah,
of each other.
I see your comment. I mean, when we are adding microplastic along with melatonin, a big part of melatonin will be absorbed on microplastic, so there is a reduction of their effect. It is possible. It is possible. But what is very interesting in this data is that even though the melatonin reduced very drastically the lipid metabolites in the cells. So it works, even though some part of melatonin will be out of service because they are absorbed on plastic. But I do believe also that even if melatonin will be absorbed in the microplastic, it will be leachated and released inside the cell, possibly. the so-called Trojan horse effects. It is even more interesting for us because part of melatonin will be vehiculated with microplastic, which is the principle of the drug delivery system. But we have to, it is a very preliminary data. I do believe that the idea was to see wherever some substances could mitigate microplastic, but using this metabolomic technology to be sure that we are speaking about a shift in the cell differentiation.
But if you know, pharmacologists use plastics for to deliver drugs.
Yeah, the drug delivery system.
Yes. So
I just, the last thing I would mention that we did with a colleague from Genova, a colleague of Margherita more than me, Professor Izzotti, the microRNA profiling in these cells. So it was very difficult for me to combine all the three aspects, metabolomic, microRNA, and the cell shift in one presentation. But I do believe that going in deep in this investigation will be very beneficial for us. Yeah. But once melatonin is also provided for people to make easier sleeping, so why not?
Thank you. Next question. Next question.
Okay.
Another question.
Okay.
Thank you very much for the great presentation. It's a very interesting topic, and right now something that is evidently affecting us. I was wondering if you guys have looked into how to prevent to get the microplastics instead of fighting. I mean, we already have the microplastics in blood in our bodies, that's evident. But a way to prevent from it to get to the oceans and to get to the food, the soil, etc. I know it might sound a bit complicated, but what about focusing also on the plastic production industries?
Yes, I would. That was the topic, the main part of the first question.
Yeah, the lobbying of the plastic industry.
Actually, I will take a very simple example to show you how struggling the things are. This morning, we are speaking about the Mediterranean region, and which will be the main challenge that we should have in the Mediterranean region. One of the challenging aspects is the lack of water scarcity. So turning other resource of water, unconventional resource of water, very interesting for us, like wastewaters, treated wastewaters. So many Mediterranean country, mainly the south part of the Mediterranean country, are now shifting their irrigation path through the wastewater treatment. Unfortunately, the microplastic in wastewaters are immense, are huge, because our clothes are made of plastic. So when you are using your washing machine for clothes, you are creating billion and billion of microplastic. This is not even considered in treating wastewaters. So this will go to the field, and that's why we have this huge amount of microplastic in our food. Now the problem is how to deal with the two challenges: the health challenge from microplastic, providing food for persons, providing water for irrigation, and so on. I mean, we need to find a balance between both of them. We need to increase technology. Technology is the one in the unique solution, I consider, because wastewater are good, but we need to increase their quality, reducing microplastic in the wastewaters. That was one of the main projects we proposed this year for the Next Med program, proposing some filters to block microplastic in wastewaters, turning wastewaters very useful. So these are our approaches. We cannot deny plastic, impossible. We need to live with, but in a clever way and in the right way.
Yeah. So, excuse me.
Maybe the person that wrote the letter paper here was paid by massive producer.
That's right,
Sorry.
friend. I wouldn't say this, but that's right.
Thank you very much for this interaction. I think George want to say some last thing, and then let's move to the next session. Thank you very much.
Andrea also. Okay.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm using melatonin to sleep.
Yes, yes.
because I'm still working during my sleep. So my question is, can you use melatonin forever as a probiotic, or there are some?
This is a question of healthcare, but melatonin can be used to regulate the circadian system and the rhythm, and mainly facilitating the sleeping process. So if it is done like this, and if it is now sold in normal, not in pharmacy, I mean, you can find it even in stores. I think everything must obey to the rule of toxicology. Nothing is toxic. Everything is toxic. It is a matter of a dose. So we need to respect a dose to not be in the toxic shift.
And I have a question.
Yeah.
Have you carried out any scientific studies about fish farming? Because, yes, because fish farming compared to the wilds, in terms of micro.
Show you a very nice picture from fish farming.
Yes.
Showing. I'm sorry, but you cannot see it. But I would just a second, because it's very important. Since the question is there, we have a fish farming in Tunisia, and they're producing sea bass larvae.
Mm-hmm.
They had a lot of mortality because of unknown disease, but it is not. It was because of the microplastic that was ingested by fish at 6 days post-hatching. These early life stages are not even visible. And you can see here the microplastic inside the intestine, blocking the transit and killing this early life stages.
I think that this should be like a very point of discussion during our days today when
I'm happy that it is stimulating interest, but
yes. And then probably a last point, Domenico. I know that you need to manage the time. Indeed, in wastewater, we have found COVID and
absolutely
a lot of microplastic, huge microplastic. The more we have microplastic in plastic in our gloves, the more we find it in wastewater. And now there is the regulation of the European Union that you can use the wastewater for irrigation and for other uses. So for irrigation, this goes to farm to fork. So this is another effect that
absolutely
which is very serious. And another consideration, now that we will have more and more water scarcity because of the climate change, desalination is the solution. But if you take water from the sea and you have in the sea microplastics, how do you manage also this process? Because
I agree with you.
This so is it becomes a vicious circle.
Absolutely, yes.
But microplastic are widespread, not only in the sea, also in the soil and in the soil, in the deep of the soil. So.
Sorry. I have to manage the time, as George said. Sorry, I think that, of course, being a Mediterranean focused conference, the microplastic is a hot topic. I'm very glad also that this came out. And also, I appreciate in the presentation of Mohammed the fact that you want to connect exposomic, genomic, and so on in the One Health approach. This is peculiar, and this is, I think, a very strong point. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mohammed. Thank you very much. Now, let's move to the author presentation. As you know, the One Health conference is always like launching a call for paper and also accepting scientific contribution all over the world. So we thank the keynotes for the amazing starting that we had this morning. And now I want to give the floor to the first session of authors, probably in this, we can say, track related to the ecosystem resilience and responsiveness. I want to give the floor to Giulia Bosi, So Giulia is connected online. So please, Giulia, the floor is yours.
Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. I'm going to share my screen. Let me know if you can see it.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So good morning, everyone. My name is Giulia Bosi. I am a postdoctoral researcher in international law at Scuola Superiore Sant'Anna in Pisa, Italy. And today I'm going to talk to you about a right to mental health perspective on climate change. But let me start by thanking the organizer of this conference and a particular big thank to Domenico Vito for all the support. So I want to start this presentation talking about this article by the BBC, which demonstrate that search queries in English around climate anxiety sorry, I cannot see my screen anymore. Okay, in the first 10 months of 2023 were 27 times higher than the same period in 2017. So this is just to show you that the connection between climate change and mental health is increasingly under attention also by the general public. So what I'm going to do in the next 10 minutes, first, I'm going to talk about climate change and mental health. Second, I'm going to talk about the right to mental health. And finally, about the use of the right to mental health in the context of climate litigation. These are the research questions that I will try to answer. Does climate change impact mental health? Can the right to mental health be a framework to address the impact of climate change on mental health? And finally, is this legal framework used in the current climate change litigation, which means the climate change cases that are brought before courts around the world? So first of all, climate change presents a threat to human health for several reasons, and we are discussing this in this conference. So first of all, climate change directly contributes to humanitarian emergencies such as heat waves, wildfires, floods, hurricanes, and this of course causes, first of all, injuries and death. But this also affects the functioning of the health system. Climate change also causes heat-related illnesses such as heat exhaustion, syncope, and strokes. It causes also respiratory and cardiovascular diseases, as well as food, water, and vector-borne diseases. But we should not forget that climate change does not only impact physical health, but it also impacts mental health. So, for example, people who experience disaster-related events often lose their homes or loved ones, or maybe they are exposed to life-threatening situations. And this could cause, for example, post-traumatic stress disorder or depression. Again, for example, a study on the mental health effects of climate change found that prolonged drought can lead to increasing farmer suicides. But more widely speaking, climate change might cause feeling of worry in the general population. A survey of 10,000 people aged 16-25 that was led in 10 countries showed that nearly 6% of respondents were highly worried about climate change, and more than 45% said their feelings about climate change affected their daily lives, in terms, for example, of their ability to work or the ability to sleep. So, especially in the past decade, people started to talk about eco-anxiety. Others talk about eco-distress or climate anxiety or climate grief. So different kind of terms are used. There is not a unique definition. The most famous and common one is the one by the American Psychological Association, according to which eco-anxiety is a chronic fear of environmental doom, but also other definitions have been provided by academics. So I included here other two. For example, the one by Coffey and others. Eco-anxiety is defined by them as the distress caused by climate change, where people are becoming anxious about the future. And another definition is given by Ment and others, eco-anxiety as a type of stress and worry linked to an environmental crisis, characterized as concerns about climate change. So, as I said, there is not a unique definition, and also we should be aware that there is some criticisms around this notion. And some academics, for example, contend that study on eco-anxiety, not all of them, but many of them, lack sufficient empirical backing. So this is just for you to be aware that is a complicated, it's a complicated notion, and there is a lot of work in academic terms around it. But I'm interested in a legal perspective, and in particular, a right to mental health perspective on that. So first of all, what is the right to mental health? Well, the right to mental health is part of the right to health. So the right to health includes both physical and mental health. So the right to health, and so the right to mental health is recognized by several international human rights law instruments. The most important one is the International Covenant on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights, which was adopted in 1966. And the most important interpretative document concerning the right to health is General Comment number 14 by the Committee on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights, which is the monitoring body of the International Covenant on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights. Every state has ratified at least one international convention that provides for the right to health. Thus, this right is relevant to all states. What does this right entail? Well, first of all, the right to mental health is a right to mental health care, so the right to access mental health care, but also a right to underlying determinants of health, such as access to food and access to water. States are required to respect, protect, and fulfill this right. The fact that the state should respect this right means that the state should prevent from interfering with this right. So, for example, the state should prevent from adopting discriminatory policies in accessing mental health care. The state should protect this right entails that the state should prevent third parties from interfering with this right. Third parties are, for example, private actors. We can think about private healthcare providers. So the state should prevent private actors from, for example, adopting discriminatory policies. And finally, the state should fulfill the right to mental health. It means that the state should take positive positive steps towards the implementation of this right. For example, it should adopt a national health policy that concerns this right. But international human rights law recognizes that to implement rights, states need resources. And as a result, it doesn't require the state to fully implement the right immediately, but this right is subject to the principle of progressive realization. So the idea is that the state should take small steps towards the progressive realization of this right. And finally, we have participation and accountability, which are the procedural leg of the right to mental health. Participation entails that people should participate in decision-making concerning mental health policies. For example, through democratic election, but also public consultation. And finally, accountability. If the state violates the right to mental health, it should be held accountable. So can this framework be used in the context of climate change? Well, this is debated. Some academics believe that yes, it can, others don't. In practice, what happens in the context of climate litigation, which is litigation that features climate change as a central issue in the case, and a very famous case is the Klimasignorinen versus Switzerland, which was decided by the European Court of Human Rights last April. So in this context, what happens is that, yes, applicants underline the impact of climate change on the mental health, and some even claim that in not taking appropriate action to fight climate change, the state is violating the right to health, including mental health. And I include here some excerpt from Indonesian Youth and Others versus Indonesia. And the applicants came, besides physical impact, climate change is linked to acute and chronic mental health problems. And also they claim children and youth are especially vulnerable to developing mental health conditions due to climate change. So in the context of application, you have, yes, I'm finishing. And finally, judgments, however, are not clear on this. So there's no clear reference to the right to mental health. So to conclude, climate change affects mental health. The right to mental health might constitute a legal framework to address the mental harm caused by climate change as a consequence of state inaction. But the right to mental health, yes, is sometimes cited in application, but it's not cited comprehensively in judgments. So thank you for your attention, and this is it on my side.
Thank you very much. So Giulia, for the sake of time, we are gonna go to all the presentation, and we collect the question at the end. So please, Margherita.
Okay, thank you, Domenico. Now we have Maddalena Buffoli from the Polytechnic of Milan, that she studied in the group of bye-bye. And she is in the group of Professor Stefano Capolongo, and are very important topics on the One Health in the urban areas, because they have many application for the resilience of building and so on. So is very I am very happy to your present here. Thank you, Maddalena. The floor is yours.
Okay, now to work. It's better. Good morning to everybody, and thanks to be here to all the organizer of the conference. Okay. Okay. As Margherita said, I'm a part of a team. I'm an architect. I'm an architect for health and for public health. I'm working at this team called Design and Health Lab from Politecnico di Milano. And our focus are focalizing three topics, main topics. And one of these is urban health, and obviously climate change and urban health. So I'm here to explain you two works, because unfortunately my colleague Andrea Rebecchi doesn't come, so I have to explain you this research and also the next one later. Let's go to know how are our climate change in Mediterranean area, because we start from this point to understand what to do with the research that I'm going to show. We know that for climate change, we have not only work on mitigation, so to the causes, but we have to work also to the system and to the strategies to adapt our world, because the climate change is ongoing. Our topics start from the specific effects of climate change in Mediterranean area, and we started from analyze it and them, and we shows the extreme heat, because it's one of the most climate change effect that have most impact on health, and also not only now but also in the future, because we know that the temperature is growing down and in the Mediterranean area, this problem becomes very fast a very big problem. Here we can see some data about the problem on human health, but not only for human health. NASA and ESA now are starting working together to understand how they can use satellite systems to help us to understand better the problems. And here you can see some problems, some example. When we speak about extreme heat, we speak also about fire and also about the desertification. And so we have a lot of problems connected. But one of the most problems is the heat island and the extreme heat that we can find in an urban context. So our research starting from that, and we wanted to analyze the hazard, the vulnerability, and the exposure of people in urban context. For doing this, we use the typical graphics of calculation of the risk, and we wanted to analyze specifically the vulnerability and the exposure of the people. And for these topics, we choose a specific typology of person. We try to understand where vulnerable people live in urban context. So we chose children, but also mother. And in Italy, in all the city, we have got the census data, so we can understand where are the most density area of the city where people live. And we can choose also which kind of people. So we can choose children or mother or also old people. Okay, we have done the same project also with old people. Unfortunately, we didn't do it for people with non-communicable disease because the data about medical situation in Italy is not geolocalized with GIS, but we are working on it. For the the hazard is the urban heat island. The exposure is the areas where with the satellite indication where we can find the hottest part in the summer 2018, and also the existing urban green spaces because the urban green spaces contracts the heat island. And then we analyze the mother and the child. Here you can find the methodology in 4 phases, but I'm going to show you each one step. The first one is to analyze the existing cities. So we take from satellite analysis the temperature on the ground floor, and we shows later the part of the city of Milan. We use Milan like a typical city, but we can do the same work in all the other cities. In Milan, we show the temperature that are more than 36 degrees. And here you can find all the area, but later in our maps, you can find only the temperature where the temperature is more than 36. In the right side, you can see the provisional urban green spaces in Milan, because we wanted to analyze now and in the future how it's going. Here you can find the vulnerability of the population. So we use, as you can see, the NIL, so the census data, to define where are the more density area for child. And we have got the data, the provisional data, also for the 2013s. So we can compare and define how the density is growing on. Here we have done the next step, the third step of the methodology is to overlap the 2 maps made by GIS data. And here is how is now in the 2080s because the data was related to the 2080s. we can see the area where the blue line, that are the area with the most density of babies, overlap to the area with high temperature. But what the things that is important that we did the same in the provisional data. Using the provisional data, we analyze the maps and overlapping the 3 layers, and at the end we define the nil, so the little specific area where you can find most temperature on the ground floor and the most density of babies. In this case, we can see what? We can see that, first of all, the hottest and the most critical area is not the centrum without green spaces, but the area between the centrum and the peripheric situation where there are more green spaces. Okay. The second thing is that the most critical area is on the east of Milan, and we have to work on it. And also with the comparison with the future new urban green spaces that we are doing in Milan with a big project called Forestami, doesn't work because the area, the most critical area, it doesn't touch by the project. So we have to work on that side. Then we can see also in the north that there are a very difficult area that is Loreto, Piola. It's we're also very close to our university, and we are trying to improve the urban green spaces in that side. And then also in the west there are 2 places, but one is less critical because there are a provision of new urban green spaces very close to it. So it's just the 57 that is more critical. I'm going to the conclusion. I think that this work is a good experience because we can redoing it, reuse it in all the other cities, because it's easy to find GIS data about the temperature and also GIS data about the census population, the census area population. So just overlapping it, we can find where we have to go to improve some strategies like network-based solution, but network-based solution is not only one that we can choose. The second is that for the future, we can connect these maps also to other maps. For example, we can overlapping with the socioeconomics area. We haven't the specific data of each one in Milan, but for example, we have got the real estate cost of the area. So we can use it to overlapping and define also an economy data that underline where are the people that suffer more the climate change. And in conclusion, we have got also another idea to overlap also with the data for emergency call. That is not easy, but it's possible to do, to understand if the project is work or not. First, sorry, I go back and thank you for the attention.
Thank you, Maddalena. You want to present the next?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Very, very short. I don't know if I was in timing or...
Okay. Indeed, for this presentation, I can say that the health system support and social deprivation are more important than green areas.
Yeah, yeah. So we wanted to overlook also the social aspects. Yeah.
Yes. Thank you.
Thanks.
Go to the next presentation. Andrea Rebecchi is not here, so Maddalena
I'm sorry.
make his presentation.
Try. I'm sorry. Ce l'hai? No, no, ma. I can start. Okay. The next presentation is about walkability, because we are architects, so our topic is to try to use our instruments to understand better where people live better than in other area. So we develop an instrument, a walkability tool, to understand which area of Milan or also in other cities are more walkable from another one. For doing this, we're starting just to say why walkability is so important. For us, it's one of the most important topics at the urban scale, because we work on urban green spaces, but also on walkability, because if a city is walkable, people are improved to go there, to go outside, to do physical activity, to meet friends, so everything is better. Starting from this point, here we can see just some benefit of active transport and about walkability, but I think that we can go quickly to the instruments. We did this instrument based in two areas. Is a tool, so we have got a multidisciplinary teams that worked on it, and we define different indicator in a different scale, and using multi-criteria analysis. The tool is have got two areas, two main areas. One macro area that is where you can analyze the indicator with archival data, and is a quantitative analysis. And another one that is a micro scale, that micro scale dimension, that have got different indicator that needs observational data, and the analysis is a qualitative analysis. Here we can see all the criteria. First macro area criteria is called density, density of intersectional, density of building, density of services. The second one is diversity, diversity of the space where you can find the transportation, the availability of transportation, of coverage of the transportation and the parking. The third one is the design, design layout of the street, of the path, of the building layout, of the green layout and the green spaces. The micro scale, so the scale where we have to go and see each street, it's made by usefulness, safeness, comfort, and aesthetics aspects. We tested it, it's a very complex tool. We tested it in quarter neighborhoods in Milan. It's close to the centrum, in that scale, medium area from centrum to peripheric area, where there are most density of people. And we taste the macro dimension, and with macro dimension analysis, we note that the design aspects are very less. So we have to improve the design of our streets, more or less, to improve people going out and do a work. Here, some very specific data. And then we analyze also the micro scale. And analyzing the micro scale, we find that the state kit aspect and the comfort aspects are very terrible. We very lost, and we have to improve also that aspect. And also we define, I don't know, no, not here. Also we define also the street where is more urgent some strategies to improve that aspect that is lost, and are the red one in the figure. We made also some article about this project, and in a second times we tried to use GIS analysis to understand and to apply the instrument to all the city, just to have an overview of all the city, but we have to do only the macro scale analysis because the micro scale is impossible to all the cities. We use vector data, area data, and here was just all the sources that we use. And here is the result, and like you can see with the comparison to the other work. In this case, we have got the centrum that is more walkable. As you can imagine, is the best part of Milan. But what is strange is also the same part that is very critical for the climate change aspect is the part of Milan that is more workable. Why? Because there are more services, because there are more shops, because there are a high density of building, so maybe is more good for work, but not for climate change because it's the hotter part of the Milan. After this, we analyze one census area for each municipality of Milan, just to suggest them what they can do. And we analyze the best one and the worst. And we compare it to try to define some strategies. Here you can find also another article we made with using these instruments. And for conclusion, we think that our work, specifically this work, is the result of a multidisciplinary approach, and we need to work together. As I said, sometimes I think that architects and urbanists understand that can promote health with their work, but at the same time, doctors and people that are expert on public health have to understand that our work is something that is important, like a vaccine, like something that improves health in the world. Okay? Thank you for your attention.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Very interesting also the use of satellite data for addressing the topic of the heat waves and so on. So for the sake of time now, we will pause 1 second the session for the coffee break. Of course, we have the chance to also exchange some thoughts with the colleagues. The coffee break is upstairs, so you can go by the elevator or by the stairs there. And we will reprise in 15 minutes at 12. Okay, so have a nice coffee break. Let's do now because it's crazy.
The people on Zoom.
Yeah, I want to advise them.
Always share this and don't share.
I know. I discovered it's not better. Close. It's not working. Yeah, it's not working there. Yes, I think so. This is the keyboard. This is the keyboard. Uè, Briscone, grande. Ehi, da una settimana. Due settimane.
Nice to see you. I saw your event. It's really nice.
No, adesso arrivo.